A young mother, full of life and dreams, kissed her children goodnight for the last time, unaware that she was only hours away from taking her final breath. 26 years old, carrying new life inside her, she believed she was building a future with the man she had loved for years. She had no reason to suspect that someone else had been watching her every move, seething with emotions that had long since turned into something dangerous. On the night of March 14, 2023, Jessica Martinez pulled into the parking lot of her San Antonio apartment, exhausted from a long day. She stepped out of her car, likely thinking about what she would cook for dinner, or maybe she was mentally preparing to break the news to her children, that soon, they would have a little brother or sister. A mother of two, now expecting her third child, she had always been resilient, always found a way to move forward, no matter what life threw at her. But before she could take another step toward her front door, the sound of tires screeching cut through the quiet night. A dark-colored SUV, moving too fast for a residential area, came to an abrupt stop. Jessica barely had time to turn her head before the door swung open. The figure that emerged wasn't a stranger. It was someone who knew exactly where she lived, someone who had spent weeks, maybe even months, consumed by jealousy and resentment. What happened next unfolded in mere seconds. The sharp crack of a gunshot pierced the air. One. Then another. Then a third. Jessica collapsed onto the pavement, blood pooling beneath her as the SUV sped away. A neighbor, startled by the noise, rushed outside and saw her lying there, gasping for air, eyes wide with terror. A desperate 911 call captured the chaos, panting breaths, frantic voices, the sheer panic of realizing that a young woman, a mother, was slipping away before their eyes. By the time first responders arrived, it was too late. Jessica Martinez, daughter, sister, mother, was gone. And inside her, a child who would never take their first breath. San Antonio police launched an immediate investigation, searching for answers. Who would want Jessica dead? At first, all eyes were on the man who should have been grieving the most, David Reynolds, the father of her unborn child. But the truth, when it finally came out, would shake an entire community. This was no random act of violence. This was personal. And the person responsible had been much closer than anyone imagined. Stay with me as we uncover the shocking truth behind the murder of Jessica Martinez. A love triangle, fueled by obsession and betrayal, ending in a brutal, calculated act. A woman who saw another's pregnancy as a threat. A man whose lies led to a deadly confrontation. And a story that serves as a chilling reminder: jealousy can kill. Jessica Martinez had always been a fighter. A single mother of two, she had worked tirelessly to build a stable home for her children in San Antonio, Texas. She lived in a modest but comfortable apartment complex, the kind of place where neighbors exchanged small talk in passing and children played outside until the streetlights flickered on. It wasn't a neighborhood accustomed to violence, until the night gunshots shattered the silence. Jessica had been in a relationship with David Reynolds for 6 years. Their love story wasn't perfect, but she believed in it. They had their ups and downs, like any couple, but she never imagined that their bond would cost her life. She had just found out she was pregnant with their third child and, despite the challenges, she saw it as a blessing. A fresh start. A chance to solidify their family. What she didn't know, what she never could have imagined, was that David had been keeping a secret. For over a year, he had been involved with another woman. Rachel Carter. A woman who, unlike Jessica, wasn't willing to share. Rachel had met David at a local bar, and what started as casual flirtation quickly escalated into a full-blown affair. She fell for him fast, believing every word he told her, that he was unhappy with Jessica, that he felt trapped, that he wanted out. Rachel clung to those promises, convincing herself that she was different, that she was the one he truly loved. But weeks turned into months, and David never left Jessica. Then, news of the pregnancy changed everything. Jessica was ecstatic when she told David that she was expecting. She sent him a text late one evening, including a photo of the sonogram, excitedly saying, "Looks like our family is growing again." David didn't respond right away. Hours passed. When he finally did reply, his message was short. "We need to talk. What Jessica didn't realize was that David wasn't alone when he read that text. Rachel was with him. And Rachel saw everything. The news of the pregnancy sent Rachel into a tailspin. The man she had spent over a year loving, waiting for, promising her a future, was now about to have another child with the woman he claimed he no longer wanted to be with. Rachel felt like she had been lied to, played, used. And she refused to be cast aside. Over the next several days, Jessica noticed a shift in David's behavior. He became distant, his phone calls grew shorter, his visits less frequent. And then there was Rachel. Jessica had never met Rachel face to face, but she had a feeling that something was off. Strange friend requests on social media. A new number texting her out of the blue, asking prying questions. And then, the final straw, a message, blunt and taunting, "You think you're the only one?" Jessica confronted David about it, asking him outright if there was another woman. He denied it, but the hesitation in his voice told her everything she needed to know. That it was a confrontation that should have ended with the truth. Instead, it ended in bloodshed. In the days leading up to her murder, Jessica confided in a close friend, admitting that something didn't feel right. She felt like she was being watched. She worried that David was hiding something. And then, on March 14, 2023, her worst fear became reality. As she pulled into her driveway that night, she had no idea that Rachel Carter had already made up her mind. She wasn't going to be the other woman anymore. She wasn't going to lose David. If Jessica and her unborn child stood in the way of the life she wanted, then Jessica had to go. Jessica Martinez had always trusted her instincts. As a mother, as a woman, she knew when something felt off. And for weeks, something had been gnawing at her. David had been acting strangely, short with his words, always distracted, constantly on his phone but quick to put it away when she walked into the room. It was subtle at first. Missed calls, canceled plans, excuses that didn't quite make sense. But then, one night, as David slept, Jessica did something she had never done before. She picked up his phone, her hands trembled as she scrolled through his messages. At first, there was nothing, just the usual conversations with friends, work colleagues, family. But then she saw a name she didn't recognize. Rachel. There were dozens of messages. Some recent, some dating back months. Flirty, intimate, unmistakably romantic. And then, the message that stopped her cold. From Rachel, sent just a few nights ago, "I don't care about her. I want you. You said she doesn't mean anything anymore." Jessica felt her stomach twist. She stared at the screen, willing the words to change, willing them to mean something else. She wanted to wake David up, scream at him, demand answers. Instead, she set the phone down carefully, breathing heavily, her pulse racing. The next morning, she confronted him. She expected an argument, expected excuses, maybe even an apology. But David barely reacted. He sighed, rubbed his face, and muttered something about Rachel being just a friend. Just a friend. Jessica had seen the messages. She knew that was a lie. Frustrated and desperate for the truth, she did something she wasn't sure she'd regret. She reached out to Rachel directly. She found her number and sent a message. "I don't know what's going on between you and David, but I think we need to talk." Rachel responded immediately. Not with denial. Not with an attempt to smooth things over. But with something far more chilling. "You have no idea what you've gotten yourself into." From that moment on, Rachel Carter became fixated. What had started as jealousy now turned into something much darker. Friends later recalled Rachel becoming obsessed with Jessica, constantly checking her social media, watching her stories, making cryptic posts of her own. She vented to coworkers, to friends, to anyone who would listen. She doesn't deserve him. If she thinks she's keeping him, she's dead wrong. Jessica knew she had stepped into dangerous territory. She tried to put it behind her, to focus on her pregnancy, her children, her future. But Rachel wouldn't let it go. Over the next few days, Jessica started noticing things, small, unsettling details that made her feel like she was being watched. A car she didn't recognize parked near her apartment. A friend request from a fake profile that seemed to disappear as soon as she declined it. A message from an unknown number that simply said, "I see you." Then, there were the arguments. Neighbors would later recall hearing heated exchanges outside Jessica's apartment. Once, a neighbor overheard Jessica on the phone, her voice raised, frustrated. "Stay away from me. Stay away from my family." They didn't know who she was talking to, but now, it's clear. Rachel was closing in, the tension was suffocating. Jessica's last social media post sent shivers through those who later saw it. A simple, ominous message, "Some people don't know when to let go." 2 days later, Jessica Martinez was dead. And the person who couldn't let go had made sure of it. March 14, 2023. It was an ordinary evening, one of those quiet nights where nothing seemed out of place. Jessica Martinez had just finished her shift at a local dental clinic and was making her way home. She was exhausted, as most working mothers are, but she had something to look forward to. She had picked up a small baby onesie earlier that day, her way of officially telling David about their child. She had held on to the hope that maybe, just maybe, this baby would bring them closer again. At 8:30 p.m., Jessica pulled into her usual parking spot outside her apartment complex. Surveillance footage captured her stepping out of the car, her bag slung over her shoulder, her phone in her hand. She glanced around, as if sensing something. Then, she started walking toward her building. At 9:15 p.m., a dark-colored SUV was seen circling the lot. The same vehicle had been spotted earlier that evening parked on a nearby street. Its driver? Rachel Carter. For days, Rachel had been spiraling, her obsession with Jessica consuming her every thought. She had spent hours scrolling through Jessica's photos, dissecting every caption, every comment. In her mind, Jessica was the enemy, the woman who stood between her and the man she had convinced herself was hers. Rachel had driven to the apartment complex before, sitting in her car, watching. But tonight was different. Tonight, she had a plan. Jessica was just steps away from her front door when she heard footsteps behind her. Fast, urgent. She barely had time to turn before Rachel was there, her face contorted with rage. "What are you doing here?" Jessica's voice was sharp, defensive. Rachel didn't answer. Instead, she pulled something from her pocket. A gun. A neighbor would later tell police they heard the argument escalate. Jessica's voice rising, angry at first, then afraid. The sound of Rachel's voice was quieter, but filled with venom. "You ruined everything." Jessica's phone was in her hand. She tried to type a message that would never be sent. "She's here." Then, gunshots. 3 of them, tearing through the night. Jessica collapsed onto the pavement. The sound of tires screeching filled the air as Rachel ran to her SUV and sped away, leaving Jessica alone, bleeding. A witness called 911, their voice frantic. "Someone's been shot. She's on the ground. She's not moving." Jessica's phone lay beside her, the screen still lit, the unfinished message glowing against the darkness. Minutes later, police and paramedics arrived. Jessica was still alive, but barely. She was rushed to the hospital, but the damage was too severe. At 10:07 p.m., Jessica Martinez was pronounced dead. Back at the scene, investigators worked quickly. Shell casings were recovered. Footage from a security camera showed the SUV fleeing. And then, something even more damning. David's phone rang. A voicemail. "It's done. She won't be a problem anymore." Rachel Carter had made her intentions clear. She had executed her plan. And now, it was only a matter of time before justice caught up to her. San Antonio police wasted no time. The moment Jessica Martinez was pronounced dead, her case became the department's top priority. A young mother of 2, pregnant with her 3rd child, gunned down in front of her own home. It was the kind of crime that demanded answers. Detectives swarmed the scene, marking evidence, collecting statements. The shell casings were carefully bagged, the blood-stained pavement photographed from every angle. But there was one piece of evidence that would soon prove invaluable: Jessica's phone. Even though the message she had tried to send was incomplete, it pointed in one direction. "She's here." Who was she referring to? Jessica's family, devastated and in shock, provided a name almost immediately: Rachel Carter. It didn't take long for police to track Rachel down. Her dark-colored SUV had been captured on multiple security cameras that night, first circling Jessica's apartment complex, then speeding away moments after the gunshots. Rachel, however, was nowhere to be found. A bolo, "Be on the lookout," was issued for her vehicle. The search was on. Meanwhile, detectives turned to David. They found him at his apartment, pacing, his face pale. He claimed he had no idea what had happened. That he had been home all night. That he hadn't spoken to Rachel. Then, detectives asked to see his phone. He hesitated, and that's when they found it. A voicemail. "It's done. She won't be a problem anymore." A chilling confession, left just minutes after Jessica had been shot. On the evening of March 15th, just under 24 hours after Jessica's murder, Rachel Carter was found in a motel on the outskirts of town. She had checked in under a fake name, paid in cash, and had been drinking heavily. When police knocked on the door, she didn't resist. She barely reacted at all. She was booked into the Behar County Jail, charged with first-degree murder, but Rachel wasn't ready to confess just yet. Inside the cold, windowless room, Rachel sat across from detectives, her hands cuffed, her gaze empty. She denied everything. "I don't know what you're talking about." She claimed she hadn't been near Jessica's apartment that night. "I was at a friend's house." "Ask them." But detectives weren't buying it. They laid out the evidence in front of her, one piece at a time. First, the security footage, then, the shell casings. Ballistics had already confirmed they matched a gun registered in her name, and finally, the forensic evidence. Gunpowder residue had been found on her clothing. Rachel's facade began to crack. She changed her story. She admitted to being at Jessica's apartment that night but insisted she only wanted to talk. She was pregnant with his child, she said, her voice shaking. "I just wanted to tell her to leave us alone." Detectives pushed harder. "Then why bring a gun?" Rachel hesitated, tears welled in her eyes, but not from remorse. "It was fear. She was screaming at me," she said. "She pushed me. I didn't mean to shoot her. It just happened." But detectives knew better. Jessica had been shot 3 times. This was no accident. This was an execution. Prosecutors wasted no time building their case. They had motive. Rachel's jealousy had been spiraling out of control for weeks. They had opportunity. Rachel had been stalking Jessica, showing up at her work, watching her from a distance, and they had cold, hard evidence: ballistics, security footage, forensic proof. Rachel Carter had nowhere to hide, but the trial would bring even more shocking revelations, and the one person who had remained silent through it all, David, was about to take the stand. San Antonio police had seen their share of violent crimes, but this case struck a nerve. A young mother, pregnant with her 3rd child, gunned down in front of her home. A crime driven by jealousy, obsession, and a love triangle that had been unraveling for months. And now, the woman responsible was about to face the full weight of justice. March 16, 2023. It was just after sunrise when officers arrived at a small motel on the outskirts of the city. Room 214. The front desk clerk had confirmed that Rachel Carter had checked in the previous night under a different name. The door swung open, and there she was, sitting on the edge of the bed, eyes hollow, hands trembling as she stubbed out a cigarette in an overflowing ashtray. The smell of alcohol lingered in the air. Her suitcase was already packed. Maybe she had been planning to run. Maybe she had been waiting for this moment all along. The officers moved in. "Rachel Carter, you're under arrest for the murder of Jessica Martinez." There was no struggle. No tears. No protest. She barely reacted at all. Handcuffed and escorted out, Rachel remained silent as cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions, but she never looked up. This was the beginning of the end. When Rachel stood before the court, she no longer had the option of silence. The evidence was overwhelming, and the prosecution made sure the jury saw every detail. They painted a picture of a woman consumed by jealousy. A woman who had spent months tracking Jessica's movements. A woman who had threatened her, harassed her, and, in the end, taken her life in cold blood. Then came the most damning revelation. The gun, Rachel had purchased it 2 weeks before the murder. This wasn't a crime of passion. This was planned. Prosecutors presented witness testimony from Jessica's co-workers, friends, and neighbors. Jessica had confided in them, fearing for her safety. She told me Rachel wouldn't stop. That she kept showing up, kept calling, kept watching her. One of Jessica's closest friends recounted a chilling conversation just a week before the murder. She said, "If anything ever happens to me, it's Rachel. Don't let her get away with it." Then came the security footage. The jury watched as Rachel's car circled the area multiple times before the attack. This wasn't a coincidence. This wasn't an accident. That it was premeditated murder. Rachel's attorneys had little room to maneuver. The evidence was overwhelming, and a confession wasn't an option. They argued that Rachel hadn't planned to kill Jessica, that she had acted out of emotional distress. They tried to paint her as a woman pushed to the edge, that she had gone there only to talk. That she hadn't meant for things to escalate, but the facts told a different story. Jessica had been shot 3 times. 1 bullet to the chest. 1 to the stomach. 1 to the head. This wasn't an emotional outburst. This was execution. Then came the biggest moment of the trial. The courtroom fell silent as David Alvarez, the man at the center of it all, took his seat before the jury. His expression was grim, his hands folded tightly together. For months, he had tried to stay out of it, but now, there was nowhere left to hide. That he was asked about his relationship with Rachel. "We were involved, but I told her it wasn't serious." He was asked about Jessica. "I loved her. I wanted to be with her." Then came the hardest question of all. Did Rachel ever threaten Jessica? A pause. A deep breath. Then, he nodded. "Yes. She told me she would never let Jessica have me. She said if Jessica thought she could just take me back, she was wrong." The jury watched as he struggled with his words. He wasn't just testifying against Rachel, he was admitting to himself that he had played a role in this tragedy. His affair had been the catalyst. His betrayal had set everything into motion. Rachel had pulled the trigger, but David had given her the reason. March 24, 2024. The day of reckoning. The courtroom was packed. Jessica's family filled the benches, her mother clutching a framed photograph of her daughter. Rachel sat motionless as the judge read the verdict. "We, the jury, find the defendant, Rachel Carter, guilty of first-degree murder." There was no reaction. No tears. No outburst, just silence. Then, the sentence, life in prison. No possibility of parole. Jessica's mother wept. Her father held his head in his hands. Her children, too young to fully understand, would grow up without her. Rachel was led away in handcuffs. Carter will spend the rest of her life behind bars, but that doesn't bring Jessica back. Jessica's sister, Maria Martinez, stepped forward. A single mother herself, Maria had always been close to Jessica, and when the time came, she didn't hesitate. "I promised her kids would always be safe. That no one would ever hurt them again." She filed for full custody, and she won. David Alvarez, though legally their father, was deemed unfit to have full custody. That he would have visitation rights, but that was all. Maria moved the children out of San Antonio, hoping to give them a fresh start, but even in a new home, in a new city, the absence of their mother followed them everywhere. Their bedtime stories were read by someone else. Their birthdays celebrated without Jessica's laughter. Their lives forever changed, while Jessica's family was left to pick up the pieces. David Alvarez became a pariah. The public had turned against him. Some saw him as a grieving man caught in a tragic situation, but many others blamed him that he had played both women against each other. He had ignored the warning signs. That he had set this chain of events in motion. Even though he wasn't the one who pulled the trigger, there was no denying that his choices had led to Jessica's death. David could no longer walk through San Antonio without being recognized. Whispers in the grocery store. Stares at the gas station. Hate messages flooding his social media. His name was now synonymous with betrayal, and so, he left. He packed his things and moved out of Texas, disappearing from the public no interviews. No statements, just silence. But could he ever truly escape the weight of what had happened? Maria and Jessica's parents refused to let their daughter's death become just another statistic. They began speaking out about the dangers of obsessive relationships, warning signs, threats, stalking. Jessica had seen it all, and yet, it hadn't been enough to save her. They pushed for stricter protections for victims of harassment and stalking, for stronger laws that could stop a threat before it turned into murder. Because Jessica wasn't the first, and she wouldn't be the last. Even after the trial, the public was left with unanswered questions. Many asked the same heartbreaking question: what if Jessica had left town? What if she had gone to the police sooner? What if someone had taken Rachel's threats more seriously? Hindsight was cruel, because now, the warning signs were crystal clear. Rachel had been unraveling for months. She had made her intentions known. And yet, no one had stopped her. Jessica had fought to protect her family, but in the end, it hadn't been enough. This case is a heartbreaking reminder of how love, jealousy, and betrayal can lead to devastating consequences. A young mother lost her life. 2 children will grow up without her. And one woman threw everything away in a moment of blind rage. But was justice truly served? Was Rachel the only one responsible for this tragedy? Could David have prevented it? And how many warning signs were ignored before it was too late? Now, I want to hear from you. Police Carlight, do you believe Rachel acted alone, or do you think David played a bigger role than he admitted? Was this a crime of passion, or was it something more? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Fire if you found this case compelling. Make sure to white heavy checkmark comment your theories. Every perspective matters. White heavy checkmark subscribe for more deep dive true crime stories. White heavy checkmark like and share to spread awareness about the dangers of unchecked jealousy and emotional manipulation. And remember, every crime has a final truth. But sometimes, the truth is more complicated than we think.